I think the Sydney half marathon, they had like a training program that they released, and it was like a 20-week structured program. It had like different intervals throughout it, rest periods, and then like a graded progression in terms of distance. Um, and also minimal race nutrition. So I think you kind of had to learn the hard way, didn't you? And I guess whenever you learn through what goes wrong, you tend to don't forget that for the rest of your running career or whatever endeavor you're in. So tell us about some of those big mistakes you made and how they helped you to get to where you are now.
Yeah, definitely. I think the New York was incredible, and I think I probably owe a lot to just the naivety of it. I don't think I knew what I was getting myself into or anything like that, which I think was fantastic. I mean, if you could get that naivety back again, it was something special. So New York was an amazing experience, and I went into that very blind, not knowing the course, not knowing anything about race nutrition or anything like that. And then sort of once I signed up to Melbourne the next year, that's when the wheels really fell off, because I was, sort of finished New York in 3 hours 30. And then I was like, signed up for Melbourne the next year and was like, I'll take some chunk of time off that easy. And definitely got ahead of myself at Melbourne and went into that with, from memory, no race nutrition, I don't think. And just had a horrible time. A royal blow up around the town in Melbourne, which anyone that's run Melbourne Marathon knows it's a pretty heinous part of the course. They really throw a curveball late. It's about 35k deep, and you go up and around a few hills, and yeah, it was like a war zone. So I definitely made some mistakes there. And I think the nutrition thing is, nutrition and eating is really interesting for people that are getting into running and distance running, because I think a lot of people, or probably the majority of people, underestimate just how much you need to eat to fuel for the amount you're actually burning day to day.
Yep.
It's incredible. Lucky enough, my coach has been to the Olympics for marathon running, and she sort of shared with me what protocol she got put on for what she should be eating in the lead up. And just the sheer amount of food is just incredible. And that's just to sort of fuel you. That's not to go in excess. So I think that's probably the biggest mistake that a lot of people make. And then, I mean, that's around the training, and then the fueling during training is sort of just a whole nother thing in itself. Once you start getting serious about it, and gels and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. In terms of what the literature says, around 10 to 12 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight. Now, when I was carb loading for the Newcastle Marathon last year, I tried that 10 to 12 grams of carbs per kilo of body weight. Now, this is a very different circumstance to me, say, carbing up for a bodybuilding competition. But for 107 kilos, I was doing 10 to 12 grams of carbs, which was a shit ton of rice and pasta and crumpets, and I nearly felt sick after it. And so, yeah, I think maybe fat adaptation for running next time, if I do like a longer event or a like a ultra marathon, might be the smarter option to sustain like a longer period of time. But what protocol did you use, or do you use for carbing up before your marathons, and I guess intra nutrition as well? So like, do you use gels, sports drinks? What's your kind of approach with nutrition?
I've had a bit of it's probably been the biggest thing in my marathon journey that I've had to sort of experiment with and work out what works for me. There's been a few times where it hasn't really worked out. Initially, yeah, I started doing pretty much the same protocol, the 10 to 12 grams of carbs per kilo of body weight. And, you sort of use anything you can find to make up those calories. And usually, I mean, we eat a pretty good diet as it is. So what would end up happening is I'd get to taper time or get to the carb load, and I'd be filling up on all sorts of stuff that I wouldn't usually be eating, whether that be, snakes or sports drinks or what have you. And I mean, once you break it down, it sort of makes sense as to why it didn't work, because your body is not used to those foods, and all of a sudden you're cramming it down, in big volumes. So I sort of learned the hard way during a couple marathons that I'd start getting a stitch. There was one I actually DNF'd a Gold Coast Marathon in 20. Would have been 2022, I think. I got a really bad stitch quite early, about 3K in. So I made it to 30K, which was just pretty much making it back to where the bags were located, and then pull the pin. So there's been a few marathons where I've had to sort of experiment as to what works best in terms of the carb load and stuff. And what I've landed on is that the carb load doesn't really work for me. And this isn't to say that this would work for everyone else. It's very much a what works for you situation. There's no sort of one shoe fits all. So I mean, what works for me is just upping the volume that I'm eating, ensuring that I'm snacking, bigger meals, so just eating more of what I usually eat. I've sort of found that works better for me, and then fueling appropriately with gels throughout the race. I think going into a race feeling a bit lighter, feeling a bit better on the start line works better for me, rather than going in having spent the last 48 hours filling up on carbs and just feeling a bit stodgy and a bit heavy. So that's been a bit of a process to work that out. And it's not a fun process, because you spend all this time training for a marathon. You don't want to get to the start line and the food's the one thing that undoes you.